How you doing, bandits? Welcome back to another one. Today, we are going to be talking about networking, or specifically, tracking your network. Now, quick thing before I get into it, if you are new here, the Back Office Bandit is not just the name of this channel. The channel actually took its name from the book that I wrote about breaking into the industry, specifically the first 3 years of me working in this business and figuring out how I was going to do this whole freelance film gig. And if there's one thread that runs through the entire book, it is that the single biggest factor in whether or not I was working consistently had nothing to do with my skills. It wasn't my resume. It wasn't anything like that. It was my relationships. It was who I knew, and it was how well I maintained those connections and whether I was actually being intentional about it or just winging it. Now, this video is a direct tie-in to chapter 5 of that book, where I get a little bit more in depth into the networking systems that I put in place, specifically talking about CRMs, which are customer relationship managers. And that was really when I started treating my networking a little bit more like a system. So if you're interested, the link to the book is down in the description. Now, this video isn't about how to build a network from scratch. That's a whole other conversation, and that's a little bit more of what the book is for. This is the technical side of it, where once you have some contacts, once you have worked on some jobs, you've met some people, you kind of know a lot of different people in a lot of different positions, and you've got some notes on them. How do you actually keep track of all that information so that your relationships and potential opportunities for gigs don't just evaporate? Well, that is what we're going to get into today. And here it is. Every person that I've worked with that I wanted to stay in touch with, not really, these are all fake names and phone numbers, but the sentiment and the setup is exactly the same that I had in my system once I'd kind of put it together. This whole thing is a very simple spreadsheet with one single formula and a countdown column that is doing all of the work to make sure that you stay on top of your contacts. Now, for a long time, I had tracked a lot of this entirely in my head, which if you are trying to do, it just basically means you're tracking nothing. What happened is I would finish a job, I would have nothing lined up, and then I would just start mentally scrolling through everyone that I knew, which at any given moment was maybe 4 or 5 people. That's not a network. That's just the last few jobs that you've worked. And I always had this kind of guilty feeling when I'd go reach out to somebody who, maybe I hadn't talked to in, 3 months or a year or something like that. I feel like it was too transactional. Now, granted, this is a business and these are professional relationships, but there was something that just felt bad about reaching out to somebody who I hadn't talked to in a long time to just be like, hey, you got any work for me? I didn't want to be that person, but I also didn't want to pay for, a customer relationship manager system that had like 40 different features that I was never going to use, that was specifically designed for, somebody generating sales leads. All I wanted was a simple tracker to keep track of who I wanted to be in touch with and when I wanted to be in touch with them based on my last conversation with them. So that's why I built this guy. And let's actually zoom this out right quick just so we can have a full view of it. So the columns are pretty straightforward. You got name, phone number, email, occupation, and any notes that you want to keep on this person. It could be general notes. It could be notes about your last conversation. It can be whatever you want it to be. Now, these last 3 columns, last contact, interval, and countdown, are the columns that are doing the most work that really make this a useful tool to deploy. Last contact would be the date that you last spoke with the person. You'll put this in manually. The interval is the number of days that you want to pass before you reach out to that person again. And this is a personal choice. It can vary by the level of your relationship with whoever this person is. Some folks you may want to reach out to every week. Other ones are every 30 days, some 90 days. Some people you might want to reach out to only twice a year. It's your call, and it will adjust based on your relationship with that person and how it develops over time. And then, of course, we have the countdown column, which is where all the magic happens. So what this long formula basically does is it is taking your last contact date, it is adding your interval days to it, and then it is subtracting today. Once it hits 0, it goes negative, and then this is going to be your cue to reach out to these people. So as you can see, probably about half my contact list is overdue to be in touch with. So based on this, it looks like we're due to talk with Vanessa Park today. So let's say we hit her up and we're like, hey, just looking for work, seeing if you got anything cooking. And she says, oh, well, actually, in like 4 weeks, I'll know whether or not I'm jumping aboard a feature, and I would love to get you on for that. So at that time, we'd come in here, we'd be like, feature due in 4 weeks, wants to bring aboard. We'll put today's date in here, and then we will put 4 weeks, which is going to be 28 days. And now this will just start counting down every time we open this. It will remind us, all right, cool, we have 28 days, 27 days, whatever. So now we have an actionable follow-up timeline where we just go into the tracker, say maybe once or twice a week just to keep an eye on our network. And we'll just make sure that we reach out when this countdown hits 0. And with any luck, we'll book ourselves on a feature and have, several weeks of paid work. And actually, I had to add one more column in here for sorting purposes because the text in this kind of throws it off. But one of the things that I do like most about Google Sheets in this regard is the ability to be able to kind of sort my contact list by priority. So for example, if I come over here to the sort column and I decide to sort Z to A, what it will do, actually, no, let's do A to Z. What it will do is it will actually sort this in the order of the priority that I need to reach out to these people. So it's like, all right, cool, overdue by 72 days. Like I'm, almost 3 months overdue to talk with this person. So I should probably prioritize hitting them up just to keep the connection warm. And so now that it's set up this way, I have a very clear order of who I should be reaching out to, which folks are overdue, and who's coming up as well. And I want to be honest about how I actually used this system, though, because I wasn't some obsessive networking machine. I wasn't blasting out to my entire list every month. Most of the time, I would pull this up during a slow period, sort by the countdown, and I'd reach out to kind of the top few people, generally checking in, not necessarily with an angle, just trying to keep the relationship warm. And yes, also saying like, oh, hey, do you have anything cooking? Like, is there anything, coming down the pipeline? Because the interesting thing about this industry is that it is freelance. It runs on favors. It runs on reputation. And those things have this kind of unique half-life to them where, you could be someone's favorite PA on a job, but if you've gone completely dark for 6 months, a year, whatever, you may not be where you were in that person's lineup. And it's not that the goodwill disappears. It's just that the hiring on these jobs is happening in real time. And what I mean by real time is that our business is not one with a formal hiring process. You're not going through weeks of interviews and callbacks. You are usually getting a text from somebody that says, hey, I've got a job in 2 weeks, 1 week, tomorrow. Are you available? And if you're not in someone's recent memory when that text gets written, it's going to be going to somebody else. The out of sight, out of mind conundrum is basically the whole problem that this spreadsheet exists to try and address. And honestly, for me, half the value of this spreadsheet wasn't even necessarily in the outreach. It was just being able to look at it and see it and be like, hey, I actually know a lot of people. There's a lot of potential for work here. And in your head, you can only hold, a few names at one time, and it starts to feel like you have no options. But if you scroll through, 20, 30, 40, 50 real contacts, that feeling starts to dissipate and, helps you maintain your sanity. But one thing that I also will say is I cannot count the number of times that I would work through a big stretch of my list during a slow period. I would hear nothing back. And then I would get a call from completely out of nowhere from somebody who wasn't even on my radar. The industry can be very funny that way. The spreadsheet didn't necessarily make it happen, but it kept me from panicking. It kept me from going dark on people in the meantime. And hopefully it increased the number of opportunities for something to happen. Because very early on, when you are building your network, it is very much a numbers game. Relationships take time to form. Consistency takes time to build. And the way you give yourself a chance is by staying on people's radar. And, you have to be a little bit of a squeaky wheel to do that. And the flip side to a random person hitting me up was I absolutely had moments where I would reach out to somebody on my list and they would hit me back 5 minutes later saying, yeah, I've actually got something coming up. Do you want in? And those wins always felt great where I was like, thank God I built this list because I never would have thought of reaching out to this person if I hadn't built this, if I hadn't made some kind of system to try and keep myself accountable. So I'm going to put a link to this Google Sheet in the description below. It'll have all these placeholder names in there. Just make a copy for yourself, drop your own contacts in, set your intervals, and go out there and try and get some work. And again, if you are a newcomer to the industry and networking and this kind of thing resonates with you and you're trying to figure it out, this book that I wrote is literally for this part of the journey. It is about figuring out how to break into the industry, how to build something consistent. The way that I describe is like, it is not the way to get into the industry, but it is a way because the number of stories that people have of how they broke into this business are infinite. But any kind of insight you can get that can hopefully give you an edge is helpful. And so I tried to write this book based on all the stuff I wish I would have known based on how my career trajectory went. This system is not going to replace actually showing up and doing good work and being someone that people want to call for their jobs. That is on you to build that skill set. But if you're currently building your network from scratch and you're doing it all from memory and you just can't remember every person that you want to try and be in touch with, a system like this is absolutely worth incorporating. Thank you guys so much for joining me. We will see you guys on the next one.